Well, good morning, everybody. On this Tuesday morning, I got to start you off with some satellite data because there was a couple of interesting things and one big surprise. The big surprise was this. Yesterday, when I was looking at all the forecast data, I would not have imagined that this little weak clipper that's kind of coming out of the north and west, but is tightly wound up in this area, would be able to produce some convection. I should have known better. We had very warm surface temperatures. Of course, the upper atmosphere is still quite cold, and there was some deeper convection that was tucked away into this little system here. And with that much synoptic shear, that means there's just rotation in the overall atmosphere, a change of wind speed and direction with height. We had a storm that spun up a brief tornado in this area and got a report right there. There it is. So we were in Cottington County, South Dakota, near Kransburg, and several train spotters actually saw this brief touchdown of a tornado right there. That was the only report from yesterday. Just amazing. Actually, there was a hail report, I guess, as well in parts of like the Willamette Valley up here along the I-5 corridor near, in this part of Oregon. So just wanted to show that as well. But just incredible to see that storm coming through there. Now, we knew the big one was coming into the west. We talked a lot about that. That was a tightly wound system with a powerful front that was going to be sweeping through the northwest here, excuse me. I was also just looking at a couple of things. Said two other things. One, we must have had some controlled burns down here in Oklahoma. You can see some of the wildfires or the smoke from those fires that were set. And also, just take a look at where the snow line is. So a week ago, we had snow that was covering this whole part of the country. And now if you just kind of move, you can see the clouds going over the snow. It's retreated to northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, parts of North Dakota, and up into the Canadian prairie. So I pulled up a map. This was on the 21st. I remember the 21st was one of our coldest days of the year in the midsection of the United States, and this is what the snow depth looked like. So we knew there was snow on the ground. There's not a lot of water in this snow overall, but since then, with all the mild air that's come in, we've melted a considerable part of that in the central U.S. Now, we will continue in these videos to examine the western U.S. snowpack. I try to do that about once a week, typically toward the end of the week, so we'll do that again soon. But the snow that's melting in this area, I just want to make a point here. It's making the top 2-3 inches of the soil quite muddy, but we're not able to get a lot of that down deep into the ground. And one of the reasons for that is what our soil temperatures are. Now, to be honest, widespread measurement of soil temperatures, while we're doing that with some of our state-level mesonets, I typically just rely on the gridded data that comes from some of our models because they have to get soil temperature pretty darn close to right in order to do anything else, like predict the lower atmospheric heat fluxes and moisture fluxes. And so what I've got is the European model's forecast of the 4-inch soil temperatures. Now, I'm going to show you 10 days. That's pretty quick. Now, this will change a lot when we get into spring. But as you look at it, we are seeing these very cold 4-inch numbers here warm up considerably in the northern plains, but that frost line is right there. So it did not creep too far to the north overall for the next 10 days, which means we're not going to be getting a lot of the moisture that's from this snow melt down below that frost line to really start to revive some of our longer standing drought issues. And I'm thinking a lot about just the central United States right now because that's where this change is occurring. But again, the most important map, I think, in my mind to be watching for the next, let's call it 60 days, is going to be this one. What about our top 3 feet soil moisture percentile? So think of it as a rank. How is this going to be changing for some of these very, very dry areas, which we talked extensively about yesterday in the forecast video. So that's it. That's why we're thinking so much about this. Now, these temperatures stay very mild. I mean, here's today's highs. We've got temperatures in parts of Nebraska well into the 70s. Again, we're looking at temperatures on Tuesday in the mid to upper 60s in parts of South Dakota as well. Most of the country is dealing with mild conditions, except for where the deeper low is trying to move over the Pacific Northwest. As we look at tomorrow, still another mild one. That's Wednesday's highs getting into Thursday. We just really don't see any sort of sustained cold air coming in at any time in the near future. This is getting into Saturday, very cool across the northern tier of the U.S., but it's kind of there for a day and moves into the northeast, and then we kind of shove it out pretty quickly. And so overall, we look at the next 7 days, and the temperatures are certainly going to be on the warmer side of average for most of the country, and even out there day 5 through 10. We have a lot of mild air that's in place now as that jet extends, putting more westerly flow across the country than northerly flow, which is something we discussed yesterday. Here's day 10 through 15. So it's just to make the point that we will likely be getting through the front half of March with quite a bit of mild air overall for what front half of March temperatures can look like. But I am not settled on this just going mild and staying mild. And I want to make a very important case for you right now, okay? Let's say that I'm wrong and we do just break over mild and we stay mild all the way through March, April, and then by the time we get to May, okay, we're now fully into spring. If that's the case, what is going to happen early in the year is we are not going to set up for this section of the United States a strong north-south temperature gradient. And that is not good. We need the evolution of spring to match more of the climatological norms. You say, what do you mean? I need to get warmer here fast and stay cooler here like it normally does. And the reason for that is, I think you all know what I'm going to say. If you keep this cooler and you keep this warmer, you get an active jet that goes right between the two. And what ends up happening is we get storm systems that curl up here, they curl up there, they go in they just roll, and then they all eventually accumulate across the east. And I'm saying that because we've got drought issues that need undone. Now, on the flip side of this, let's just say that we don't get that strong poleward temperature gradient, and it's warm here, and it's warm down here. There is no thermal gradient in the lower atmosphere, which means we do not have a strong upper level thermal gradient, which means you don't have a strong jet stream. And those years where we built in significant drought risk into the central United States, one of the early signals that could happen is with a lack of a strong temperature gradient in spring. You don't get the flow, you don't get the winds, you don't get the storm systems, and then it just tends to maintain itself. So where you have, by the time you get to June or July, it's 100 degrees in Texas, and it's 100 degrees in North Dakota. And the problem here is that without that gradient, we run into significant issues of getting the atmosphere to move. So the jet stream balls up into a big ridge here as the flow goes over the top of the midsection of the country. That is what I'm concerned about happening. Now, these models right now are going to do a terrible job. We're about to enter into the time of year where our forecasting skill is going to be its worst. Okay, so don't expect us to do well. I'm saying us as the general meteorological community. Don't expect us to do well with any sort of subseasonal forecasting. So let me give you an example. I think, based on the MJO progression, that we're going to get into late March and early April and have another round of cool air that's going to drive into the central U.S. and east. I don't think it's going to be west. I think it's going to be the central U.S. and east. Now, what did the models say? This is a 7-day sliding window going through the first week of March. That's the second week of March. Here's the third week of March. That's the equinox, by the way. And there's the fourth week of March getting into the very beginning of April. And you're going, nothing you just said is being shown in the model. I understand. It's trying to keep a lot of cooler air here and mild through the midsection of the country. Is that a possibility? Absolutely. But it would require that these factors that have been controlling the weather patterns for months, specifically jet extensions, specifically MJO just traversing all 8 of its phases with pretty good regularity, that would suggest that those features no longer matter. Maybe La Niña's rapid demise is a part of this as well. But the model is not showing any sort of a big cold intrusion like I mentioned out here at the end of March. I'm just thinking that it's a possibility we cannot ignore. Instead, it's trying to keep more troughs in the western United States. And what it looks like is this. Let's go to the upper level heights. We'll go to 7-day anomalies, and let's go here. So this is, again, through the first week of March. This is the second week of March. Yeah, we're going to watch, starting this Sunday into Monday, pretty active weather coming across the United States. Get into the details in that in a second. There's like kind of the third week of March. And look, there is something out there trying to barrel through. But the fourth week of March, and beyond, the atmosphere keeps kind of dropping troughs here and has general higher heights there. Now, from yesterday that I'll be watching for some sort of a southeast ridge or maybe a Caribbean ridge rather than a southeast ridge. And if that's the case, that's going to light up the southeast, almost all the way over to about maybe Norman to Dallas with severe weather. So we'd kind of lop off this section of the country and say, look out for a lot of severe weather come late March into April. What I'm worried about, though, is that if we have any shift of this toward the east, how that makes so much more of the southern plains dry going forward, which we talked about yesterday. So these temperature issues in the upper level flow pattern are going to be critical to all of this because we know this. This is what we've seen since December 1. We've been very wet in this corridor. Tremendous flooding in parts of, coming toward Kentucky through Virginia. We've had a wet corridor that's been through here as well. But there is drought anchored in the southwest getting into Mexico. And I've shown you already the snowfall deficits on the year. We've seen the soil moisture problems here. So we just have to consider all of these risk factors because winter's not necessarily leaving us with a leg up in certain areas on favorable weather patterns to get into a worry-free spring. Does that make sense? Like that's my thought process with all of this. So let's go ahead and have a look at where the near-term pattern is going to go because as you saw the other day, my forecast yesterday, we've got a piece of the jet that's coming across the country. It's going to make it. It's going to get things going here in the near term. But as you look at the National Weather Service all hazards map, another day of wind issues here. We have red flag warnings that are out. There's some dense fog this morning here and here. We're still watching flooding along the lower Mississippi. And we do know that we have the issues with still the deep system that's coming into the northwest, putting winter storm warnings up on the northern parts of the Cascades here. Strong winds in the Columbia Basin. So let's go and have a look at what these winds are going to look like, just adding them all up and looking at the maximum wind speed for the next 7 days. So strong winds, Oregon and Washington, possibly some strong winds in the Snake River Valley, but then Montana, Wyoming, the northern plains through the Midwest. This next system coming through has got its chance for ripping off some decently strong winds as it goes across the country. And you say, well, why? Well, we do have right now, there's a temperature gradient we're going to be able to use. It's later in the forecast time period. I'm worried about that going away. So how much rain are we expecting? Actually, let's say this. How much total precipitation are we expecting from now through next Monday? So that's a week. And what I'll be talking about in this forecast is a system that's going to come out Sunday into Monday into the Four Corners states. And the concern I'm going to have for severe weather in this area, the risk, I know you don't see it on this map, but the risk after Tuesday on snow here and what it could mean for just reviving some needed moisture in these areas. Because it's not yet. It's still about a week away. Until then, we've got a big system coming in the northwest. And we've got clippers that are rolling through. You can see them right here on the high-res NAM. So there goes one clipper. That's actually the one yesterday that produced the tornado in parts of South Dakota. So that one sneaks through, goes off to the northeast. There comes another one here. It rolls over the Great Lakes. This would be by Wednesday afternoon. It gets into the northeast, mix of snow and rain there, with some snow in Quebec and Ontario following it. Now, starting back off in the northwest, there's the deep low that we still had that's given us all of these watches and advisories and warnings here. This is early this morning. But by later on today into tonight, it's pretty much gone. That system is not able to push through the higher pressure that's on the other side of the mountains here. So what we need to do is see how the longer-term forecast models take this out over the next 10 days. So I've got the European right. I have the GFS on the left. We've already seen these next little clippers. So there's one there. See them? 1, 2. We have one that sneaks down over the Great Lakes by Thursday. There it is. Gets into the northeast. Creates a bit of a mess in the northeast. There's another clipper. That one's coming in on Friday. So that's our third clipper coming through. And now we're going to watch this high. Saturday into, there it is, Sunday. The high that follows this, that's what's bringing in the cold weather in the northeast. Well, the flow around it's going to go like this. And that is going to open up the Gulf. Now, already by Sunday evening, we've already got the risk of snow coming into parts of Colorado, maybe into Kansas and parts of Nebraska. There is a low here as well on the GFS. The deeper trough is on the back side, so it's coming through California. The models are different in the timing. As I said yesterday, the European is the faster in terms of progression. And just make the same comment. That's a rare thing. Usually the European is slower than the GFS. But as we note, this system's going to come out here, feeding on the flow around this high, opening the Gulf of Mexico wide, and we're going to just dump moisture ahead of this. And these two waves are coming together in the European, and they're too far apart in the GFS. See that? So they're phasing here by next Tuesday, and they're not there. So this could be relatively big snows on the backside of this in the mountains. Many of us will be in Denver for Commodity Classic, but then watch how the snow forms on the northern side of this low. I'm watching the European by the time we get to next Tuesday. Now, understand, this is a week away in the forecast, and many things will change. But there's going to be concern in this whole area for severe storms and heavy rain, and the risk on the backside of this for a quick hitting snowstorm that comes through. Now, when does the GFS get it together? As you watch that monster go ripping right through there, the GFS now has this system coming out, trying to phase, and that's when it develops its low. So if you notice, it's about, 800 to 1,000 miles behind the European solution. But that's the next big system we're going to watch. And again, let me just show it for you here. We're going to start Sunday into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of next week. Okay, I do want to make note, this is a convective available potential energy map from the European model. So we're looking here at energy in the atmosphere that can be used to drive convective storms, big thunderstorms. And on Monday night, we see a corridor opening here where we'll have Cape values up over 1,000. We're going to watch that translate to the east on Tuesday, so you'll see it pop again on Tuesday evening in this area. And this is just to show you that next Monday into Tuesday, if the European has the speed right on this system, that's when we're going to be watching for the risk of severe storms across parts of the lower Mississippi Valley over to the Red River Valley and then eventually into the southeast. Okay, snowfall. Just looking at total snowfall through this next system. So I'm going to take you out there to next Wednesday. We've got the clippers, and then we've got the lows coming in late this weekend, following the low that's going through here today. And just take note of some of these snowfall totals out of the European. This is the GFS. A lot of differences, right? I mean, GFS, European. I'll show you the NBM, but it's now back to taking its dear sweet time to catch up on the potential for the snow out of this system. But just take note, the NBM has got this very aggressive corridor hitting the far eastern side of the Canadian prairie, leaving this whole region out of the path of any sort of snow coming for the next probably 10 days or so. On the total precip side, I like the European solution, and I finally did make that adjustment I've been telling you about, for 6 months. I've put every value that's over an inch in yellow, made the numbers a little larger for us to see. But that's through Sunday. Now watch. As we get into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, the European model with that bigger system of the phased waves has got a lot more precipitation for this corridor. And you can see a few of these areas easily eclipsing an inch. And if you look at the probability of getting over an inch for the next 10 days, that region is our best chance at seeing more wet weather. Now, this is the same region that's been getting all of the wet weather, right? That's why I went back and showed you this. I mean, that's that corridor that's been quite wet, but possibly we could extend this more into more of the Midwest and parts of the Central Plains, which need more of this moisture. As we play beyond to the next 10 days and just look out there 15 days, that's what we tend to see. This is our wettest region, and our driest areas, better seen by going down to who stays under a half inch, continue to be those same corridors we've talked about for weeks on end. So that continues to be a big concern of mine. All right, though, just to give you the week 2 rundown, that's the low we're considering. There it goes ripping through the country. And what I'm starting to see is a more open wave train getting out there to early March. Now, this is March 9th and the 10th. You say, what are you talking about? Well, I'm starting to see these Rossby waves that are no longer blocking themselves up with big high pressure north of low pressure. That could give us a much more regular cadence of our weather systems going through the remainder of March. We just need to consider that because we're trying to understand how do we end up in terms of our precipitation patterns at that point. Because our new week 2 forecasts, I mean, look at the GFS or look at the the European or the CPC. They've got this flow coming back, and we have holes that need filled in. And the more of these waves that we get, the better the chances are that we're going to return moisture to this area at some point. But to give you the latest update from March 10 to April 10 from the European model, it continues to give us that same idea. The wettest conditions here, I think we could expand that a bit. The risk of severe weather kind of in a couple of corridors here. And this is what I'm going to be watching most carefully. How do the storms get back here? Are these systems too fast to get the right tilt to draw moisture back in order to fill in this gap? Because the model is banking on persistence here more than anything. And that's what's going to be top of mind for me going forward. All right, the last thing I want to cover today, as we've now looked out here at about April 10th in the models, is South America. Now, you're looking at an animation here of precipitable water. So the higher you get on the color bar here going to the right, the more juice there is in the atmosphere. And I'm just going to play this quickly because I want you to notice something. For the last, month or so, I thought there was pretty decent moisture in this range. But it seems like over the next 10 to 15 days, the subtropical high here is kind of just invading a bit farther into this part of Brazil. So that's pushing all the wettest weather around its periphery. Now that has been an area that over the last month has been getting drier. We're talking about Minas Gerais. That's how you say it. Minas Gerais. Gosh, I butchered that. Even though I got help the other day from a guy on LinkedIn how to pronounce it. But anyway, north of that, Bahia, this region's been drier. Now this doesn't matter, okay, how dry it's been in here. That's fine. There's still plenty of rain there. And we can even see that if you just look back over the last couple of days, if we get this playing here, we've had storms in this area and big storms down here coming out of Cordoba, southern Cordoba into Buenos Aires. So the question is, does this area stay dry? And the new 14-day outlook from the European model just keeps this region very dry. And we do plant safrinha crops. I mean, Goiás is a major producer of safrinha crops, and this side of Mato Grosso is as well. So the question is, how long do we keep this kind of C shape to the heaviest precipitation, leaving a broader section here without? And if that continues to be a persistent signal in the model, we've got something to talk about in terms of the total production for the safrinha crop, because that is a strong dry signal that if it is still there by the time we get into March and beyond, and there's going to be a story. I just want to make sure that you know about it. All right, that's all I got for you today. You have a good rest of your day, and we'll pick this up again tomorrow morning. Thanks.